Oh, hey, what's up?
I got you these. You know.
Oh, sweetie, thank you. That's so sweet of you. Thank you.
Is that another motor?
Oh, this? Yeah, this is an MPC 2212. I have to have it for the pit droid cart because it's got more torque and more power. I really needed this to upgrade my cart, so better to beg for forgiveness than ask permission, right?
Hi everyone, welcome to Pal to Tech. There's a little issue, or a quirk I'll call it, on Fujifilm cameras where you don't really get an easy way to see a preview of your depth of field. For example, you set your ISO to a fixed value, you set your shutter speed to a fixed value, and then you look through the viewfinder and you start to rotate your aperture ring. Now, while you're turning your aperture dial, you can see your depth of field. In other words, the areas of your shot that are going to be in focus. And that's really handy if you want to judge exactly what's going to be in focus in your scene. But here's the issue. If you have your ISO dial set to A for automatic and you have your shutter speed set to A for automatic, if you set it like that and you go to rotate the aperture dial, watch what happens. I'm going to rotate the dial from F2 now back to F8, just like I did before. Have a look at this. Nothing's happening. You see that? So basically, there's no aperture preview when you have everything else in automatic and you're trying to adjust your aperture settings. However, it is available in manual mode. In other words, if you have the other dials set to a fixed value and you rotate your aperture ring, you can see a depth of field preview. So in cases like this, you want to enable a button to show you your depth of field preview. It's sort of a toggle switch. Here's how to turn it on. Just press and hold down the DISP back button until the menu appears. Once it does, go ahead and choose the button you want to assign it to. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to assign it to the auto exposure lock button on the XT3. But just to be clear, you can assign it to any button you want. Look for the choice that says Preview Depth of Field. And you'll see that it looks like a little set of aperture blades. Okay, now, if you have everything in auto and you start to rotate your aperture ring, as I'm rotating it, look, nothing's happening. You see that just like before. Now I'm going to press the button that I assigned, and it functions like a toggle switch, so you don't need to hold it down. Just press it once, boom. And look at the upper left corner of the screen. You see that right there? Now when I turn the aperture ring, have a look at this. You see that? Now, suppose you don't want to use the aperture ring on your lens and you instead want to control your aperture using the front command dial on the camera. All you need to do is set your aperture ring to A for automatic and its button dial setting, aperture ring setting. You see that right there? It's normally set to auto. That's the default behavior. Change it to command. Now you can use the front command dial to change the aperture setting. If it's not working for you, try the following. Press and hold down the front command dial until you see this menu right here. And make sure that you've got aperture selected in the choice. And lastly, in the button dial setting area of the menu, you will see a grayed out section called aperture setting. You see that right there? It is always grayed out when you have any lens attached to your camera that already has an aperture ring on it. But what about lenses that don't have aperture rings, like this Viltrox 85mm? That is where this setting comes in handy. As soon as you put a lens on the camera that does not have an aperture ring, that setting will become active. You see that right there? And inside it, you have three choices: auto and manual, auto, or manual. These menu settings specifically control how the camera talks to the lens, and it uses the front command dial. If you have it set to auto plus manual, you have the most flexibility. When you go to take your shot, you can rotate the front command dial to change your aperture. You see that? But as I get to the end of rotating it all the way to the right, I finally get to the last setting, which is automatic. Now, it's the same thing as if I had set a normal aperture ring in A for automatic. So again, this setting right here allows you to use the front command dial to either set fixed aperture settings, or you can set the automatic setting simply by rotating the ring. However, if you set it to automatic, now rotating the front command dial does absolutely nothing. It's always in automatic mode. Your aperture is always set to automatic. Not very flexible, but if you always have your aperture in automatic, it's one less thing to worry about having to turn and knock when you're using the camera. And finally, when you set it to manual, it does exactly what you think it does. Rotating the front command dial sets the aperture to a fixed value, except there's no automatic. It goes to either the widest aperture all the way down to the smallest aperture, and that's it. So basically, when you think about it, it's actually best to just leave it in auto plus manual whenever you're using a lens that doesn't have an aperture ring on it. That'll give you the most flexibility. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you found the video helpful or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I'm going to be signing off now, but have a wonderful weekend, and I will catch you in a new video next week. Take care.